The title of my research project is Theodicy and Justified Certitude of God's Nature and Existence. The agenda I will cover is number 1, the introduction, which will include my thesis statement and first principles. Next will be a few definitions, and following that will be the evidence for God's existence and nature, followed with a summary. Introduction. My thesis statement is the following. Theodicy and the light of pure natural reason provides knowledge and justified certitude of God's nature and existence. The first principles included are the principle of sufficient reason, that our reason and the evidence of our senses are trustworthy. Next is the principle of efficient causality, that anything which begins to exist must have been brought into existence by something distinct from itself, an efficient cause. And lastly, of course, is the principle of identity, which says what exists, exists, and what does not exist, does not exist. Next are the definitions I would like to cover. Theodicy is natural theology, or the study of God's existence and attributes as known by the light of natural reason and apart from supernatural revelation. Its focus is to vindicate God's goodness and providence despite the evident evil in the universe. Justified certitude is warranted evidence or an assent of thought warranted by adequate evidence. The first principles are the self-evident truths that serve as the basis of a science. Nature or essence is what makes a thing what it is and distinguishes it from all other things. Subsistent or subsistence is having being and operating through itself, not through union with another. Next, I would like to go over the proof from pure natural reason for God's existence. And I have 5 major pillars I will cover in this section. Number 1 is the order in nature. All nature acts according to law. There is an intelligent designer, a lawgiver that must be of vast intelligence. The lawgiver has free will, and this lawgiver has given free will to human beings as well. The whole universe is guided by this natural law. Different natures accord in one order. There is purpose, order, standards, and ends. God is this intelligent being. Next, we have motion. Things move with some help. Motion comes from without. As you can see, I have included a picture of a train car. And basically, if you've ever seen a freight train, which most people have, you know there's an engine car that gets the train moving. So the train cannot start moving without this first mover, the engine car. And this cannot go on to infinity. There is an unmoved source of motion. There must be a first mover. God is this unmoved mover. Next, we have change. Change is very similar to motion. Many things in nature and the world change. Change depends on something other than the thing that changes. Only something perfect would not be subject to this change. God is this perfect, unchanged being. Next is causality. There is a cause for every effect in nature. An effect cannot cause itself. This cannot go on to infinitely, as every cause is dependent on a prior cause. The first cause of all things in nature must be an uncaused cause, and God is this uncaused first cause. Next, we have dependence. There is necessary beings versus contingent beings. Everything in nature is dependent. Things come into existence and go out of existence. There must be some necessary being in itself that is not dependent. This being causes in others their necessity. God is who is necessary in itself and self-existent or subsistent. Next, I would like to go over some further evidence that we basically just covered, but in a little more detail. These are primary resources that I used in my research. Of course, Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas with his 5 ways of proofs for God's existence. And then I will just mention Pascal's wager as well. So Aristotle, first, let's look at Aristotle. He had the theory of 4 causes of being or reasons for existence. And these were four basic metaphysical principles that are what is necessary to understand actually Thomas Aquinas' 5 ways for proofs for God's existence. So everything undergoes change, potential to actual. The first is material cause. That's the matter. That's the actual properties of a thing that is, what we see, touch, taste, or feel. Next, Aristotle noted formal cause, the design. That's structure or design of a being, the blueprints or the plan. What makes it one thing rather than another? And then the third cause of being or reason for existence, according to Aristotle, was the efficient cause. That is potency to act or motion, a thing or an agent or a force which brings something into being, bringing about in some way the thing which is the effect. And then lastly, he noted the final cause, the natural end, the ultimate purpose for being. Why did something come about? Aristotle did indicate that the proof of God from movement was sufficient. Whatever is in motion is moved by another. And this would be sufficient for the proof of God's existence. It's impossible also, again, to proceed to infinity in movers and things moved. Next, I wanted to review Thomas Aquinas' 5 ways of proofs for God's existence. The first one is motion. Basically, whatever is in motion is put in motion by another. And again, this cannot go on to infinity. There's an unmoved mover. There is a first prime unmoved mover, which is God. And as earlier I had mentioned the train, the boxcar, the engine, as an analogy there. Secondly, Thomas Aquinas noted efficient causality. Every effect has a cause. There is no case where a thing is found to be the efficient cause of itself. And again, this cannot go on to infinity, as we mentioned earlier, because every cause is dependent on a prior cause. Nothing is or can be the cause of itself. Every effect has a cause. Thirdly is contingency of being. There's possibility and necessity that we had talked about. Things in nature come into existence and pass out of existence. Things are possible to be and possible not to be. There must be something necessary to exist, as everything has its necessity caused by something else or it does not. There exists some being necessary in itself and does not receive it from another, but rather causes in others their necessity, and we identify that as God. Fourth, degrees of perfection. All beings have characteristics to varying degrees. Some good, some noble, some true. There must be something best, truest, and greatest in being. There must be something causing goodness and every perfection in beings, and this maximum cause is God. And lastly, Thomas Aquinas mentioned final causality, governance. If there's a design, there is a designer. In nature, inanimate and non-intelligent objects act towards the best possible purpose, though they're not always aware that they are doing that. They achieve their purpose not by chance, but rather according to a plan. There is a design. Some intelligent being with knowledge exists, by whom all natural things are directed to their end, and this, we say, is God. This implies purpose, order, standards, and ends that we had mentioned. Again, if there is a design, there is a designer, and that designer is God. I did want to mention Pascal's wager. Pascal did not believe that reason alone can prove God's existence, but it is rational to believe. A wager is necessary. He said you could place a bet with God and lose nothing if God does not exist. Or you could place a bet against God, and if you're wrong and he exists, you lose everything. So basically Pascal thought that the potential rewards of faith outweigh the potential costs of disbelief. So he believed in faith. Next, I want to cover the nature of God. Pure reason, again, gives some knowledge of God's nature, since he is first cause, eternal, and self-existence, as we've already explained. God is subsistent, being itself. As he said to Moses, I am who am. God exists absolutely and is identical with the fullness of being. He is limitless, indivisible, infinite, and pure spirit. God is one and cannot be limited by another God outside himself. He is not material but spiritual. Bodies have limitations and are subject to change. God is not subject to change. He's eternal, non-temporal, not material. God is transcendent and the creator of all things. He is intelligent with a free will who creates and sustains all in creation. God is omniscient, all-knowing, omnipotent, all-powerful, and omnipresent, present everywhere. There are no barriers to his knowledge and acting. God is perfect goodness. There are a few objections. There are multiple objections to the nature of God, but I wanted to mention a few that are very common. I'm sure you've heard of these. Number one is sufferings in life. If there is a perfect God who loves everybody and is all good, why is there suffering? Why is there evil in the world? And basically, we cannot understand God's purpose in everything. His design is not always clear to man. There's a wonderful painting at the Art Institute in Chicago that I would encourage you to see if you're ever in Chicago and you have not seen it yet. It's called A Sunday Afternoon on the Island. And it's basically a beautiful mosaic picture of a beautiful summer afternoon in the park. And if you walk up very close to it, you'll see a lot of little dots. But if you walk far away, you'll see the beautiful picture. And basically, it's been said that we are those dots. We are just a little dot in God's whole universal design. And we don't understand the ultimate and his ultimate design, but he knows what he's doing. And we're just little specks in the whole plan. I also wanted to include a passage from Isaiah 55, which I think is very appropriate. God says that for my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, says the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. I thought that was quite appropriate for this. Also wastefulness. Why so many useless things in the world? It doesn't seem to make sense to us, but nature is so arranged that the purpose of the designer can never be defeated. Maybe baby birds die before they even are able to fly, but their bodies may feed many smaller creatures in nature and so on. So there is a purpose and a design that God has, and we need to have faith. This is a wonderful quote from Isaac Newton, a great mathematician and astronomer. And I thought it was very appropriate here as well. He said, "This most beautiful system of sun, planets, and comets could no wise come into existence without the design and dominion of a being at once intelligent and powerful. This being governs all things, not as if he were the soul of the world, but as the Lord of everything. We admire him for his perfections, we venerate him, and we worship him for his lordship." In conclusion, natural reason proves the existence of a supreme being, as we've gone over in these prior slides. There's an order in nature and the natural law. Motion and whatever moves is moved by another, and God is not moved or changed by any other being. Change depends on something outside itself. Causality and every effect in nature has a cause, and God is not produced by any other being. Contingency in nature and God exists without the help of any other being. This supreme being, God, holds within himself the source of his own existence. Man is totally dependent on God for everything. And I did include a quote from Dostoevsky, if God does not exist, everything is permitted. And how true is that as we see today in the world? The natural moral law has been decimated and we see disorder, chaos, and evil all around us. This is my bibliography. Thank you very much.